throwing at people. So.
Motley Crue got much more theatrical than everybody else did.
Nicky used lighter fluid or something.
We put that stuff on Nicky's boots, and we would have these candelabras with the skulls and the flames, and I would take the sword very dramatically.
Hit him in the legs, and he'd go up in flames.
And people never saw that in clubs before. It just got the attention of fans, and then people wanted to come see what we were doing.
They started getting really popular on the Strip.
And everybody wanted to be around Motley. Everybody did.
Anytime we played the Whiskey, I would just invite everybody who wanted to go back to our apartment right back with us.
The apartment that Motley Crue had was literally right up the street from the Whiskey.
We'd be like the Pied Pipers, and there'd be a couple hundred people following us into this two-bedroom apartment, and it was crazy.
Motley's apartment would be compared to look at a floor in a club where everybody's smoking and drinking and putting their cigarettes out on the floor. That was the living room. That was a clean room, too, by the way.
It was nothing but booze bottles everywhere, chicks everywhere. You had situations, a lot of sexual situations that went on in and around that camp.
It was just like a revolving bedrooms. Girls would come in, and we'd make them leave out the back window.
One time, and I walked into Vince's room, and he had one girl giving him a from this side, and one girl giving him a from this side.
Well, they used to strap these girls on this, like, wheel, and one time, I guess, they gave this girl a enema, and she all over the place. So they almost had to burn the house down. It was just, it was disgusting. They probably stopped that by now.
In the early days of that wave of LA rock, nobody was getting signed.
To get a record deal back then was almost impossible.
In Quiet Riot's situation, we were turned down by just about every label at least twice, some of them 3 times.
They couldn't get a record deal no matter what. They're working their butts off.
We were playing at a club in the Valley. There was a producer who thought the songs were really good, and he wanted to take us into the studio to do some demos, which we did. Those demos then were heard by Epic/CBS. And then once we got signed, we cut the Mental Health record on available time. It was released. Nobody expected it to do well. For the first 6 or 7 months, it was a real slow grind.
I remember when that band was starting to break with Come On Feel the Noise. It was just a huge song.
This was November 15th of '83. That's when we found out that the next week, Mental Health was going to be #1 on the Billboard charts. Once that happened, bands started getting signed out of LA left and right. It didn't matter if you played rock, if your drummer had 2 bass drums, you got signed. If you had people that were singing like they were singing through helium, you got signed. And it was just insanity from that point on.
Coming up, metal puts the Strip back in Sunset.
I remember one night there was some guy in a band and some girl doing it in the dumpster. So, you know, you could do it anywhere.
Next on When Metal Ruled the World.
The local music of LA became the most popular genre in the 80s. Quiet Riot and Motley Crue blew everything up.
What happened with Mental Health is that was the album that really broke the market for a lot of these bands, where people saw that metal could be a major commercial force.
Quiet Riot instantly went to #1 with Come On Feel the Noise. And then we released Shout the Devil.
Shout at the Devil became the anthemic record and brought Motley Crue to a much wider audience.
With the success of Motley and Quiet Riot, everybody was kind of scrambling to fit the mold.
People were interested in guitar solos and musical prowess and the whole culture that was attached to it. The look, loud music, big hair, all wrapped in one big nice package, you know. It was very appealing.
Everybody thought that LA was the place to go to sign a band. So every single company came and they signed everybody.
You would come to LA, you would play little clubs, and then you'd play the Strip. And then the A&R guys would go see whoever the biggest drawing band was.
And so if you're in a band in the Midwest somewhere, and you can't go anywhere else. It's like, let's pack up and let's go to L.A. That's what happened to Poison.
I knew that there was an awesome metal scene in L.A. We knew we had to go to L.A. if we wanted to try to break big. When Poison first got to L.A., we were gypsy kind of glam.
Poison's sound was pop metal, very rhymey. It was pretty hard to get record companies to come out and see Poison initially. Their songwriting wasn't very developed, and it was really about their show. You had to see their show. It was just really, really fun.
A lot of the bands back in the mid-'80s, before they made it, self-promotion became key in promoting your band.
The whole Sunset Strip was a big confetti factory, from the whiskey all the way up to the Gazzaris.
You couldn't walk down the street without seeing a band putting up flyers.
Poison definitely were the Hollywood kings of promotion. They pimped their out so well.
And we put all of our money, whatever we had left, we put them into these ugly lime green flyers. And the reason we used them is because they were so cheap and no one else wanted to use them.
There was always sort of flyer wars.
We'd be putting our posters up on the telephone poles. Next band would come along a couple hours later, rip yours down, put theirs up. It was a very competitive scene.
There may have been a time or two where I accidentally stapled over a few of the other bands we were competing with, but it was all in good fun.
Back in the 80s, in order to make it, you have to dedicate yourself 100%. So a lot of rockers, including myself, were taken in by girls and fed and bathed.
The girls at that time were so awesome to us. I mean, they would bring food, part of our survival.
We would actually only date girls that had money. And we scored once. I dated a girl that worked in a supermarket, so that was like the big thing right there. It was like free food.
I prefer not to refer to the ladies as groupies. I think I like to refer to them as enablers. They enabled us to live that lifestyle.
There was a time that the whole strip bar, mud wrestling was very chic. We had girlfriends that were strippers and mud wrestlers and porn stars.
Those girls made a lot of money, and all those girls were into rockers, whether you had money or not.
Bands basically lived there.
In Hollywood, there's a place called Tropicana, and it's a great kind of mud wrestling slash strip club slash beer drinking rock party establishment.
Yeah, I used to love that place. It had great looking girls. Me and Steve Piercy were really good friends, and we'd go to the Tropicana a lot.
Sebastian would be in there, and they would get drunk and have to go and get in the mud.
It was a fun night out.
Some of the better strippers and porn stars would get the guys that were really already in successful bands.
The greatest bane of our groupie existence was the strippers, because then it was like, oh, great, like I can compete with breast implants.
If you were in a band and you played on the strip, you could get a girlfriend at the Tropicana.
Vince likes strippers. Yeah, what can I say?
Lo and behold, that's where I met one of my wives.
The Tropicana and the Body Shop, they were all just symptoms of the disease. It was like, how far can you go with your indulgence?
I wanna rock! The Rainbow was the place where like every conquering rock star after a big gig, after whatever, would go.
10 o'clock, the groupies would start filing in. At 11 o'clock, just rock and roll mayhem.
It was just a zoo. It was just a hair for days, girls and nothing. It was good.
Sex happened anywhere at the Rainbow.
Definitely sex in the bathrooms. A stall would be occupied, and there's 4 legs, or 2 legs and 2 knees.
Of course, every so often you see a couple of girls under the table. I think they were shining their shoes or something.
I was actually having my while I was eating.
Drinking a Jack and Coke, and you got a girl underneath the table.
I remember one night I went outside to get some fresh air, and there was some guy in the band and some girl doing it in the dumpster. I mean, so, you know, you could do it anywhere.
It's all a big party. You know, in Hollywood, you say it's a party and everybody comes, as long as it's a party. Party, party, party.
I have to say, honestly, a lot of it's a big blur, but I really believe that if you remember the Rainbow clearly, you weren't really there.
There were a lot of things that happened in the scene. The way that we were having sex the way that we were doing drugs, the way that we were drinking, the way that we were partying, we all believed we were indestructible.
For us, it happened faster than normal.
Motley came out, they just blitzkrieged the whole United States. They took off and started roaring up the charts, and it couldn't be stopped.
All of a sudden, you're 21 years old, you know, you got $1 million.
And the Motley guys sort of ruled Los Angeles.
The Motley party just got bigger and more widespread.
I mean, the world is your oyster, and you have the fast cars, and you have the money, you have the alcohol. Problems are going to happen.
We were at my place in Redondo Beach, and the Hanoi Rocks guys came into town, and Razzle came over to my house, and we had a party.
Razzle was friends with Motley Crue.
You know, everybody's having fun. It's just one of those things where it just seems so normal. We're out of beer, let's go down the street.
Vince had just gotten a new car, and he decided to take Razzle down to buy some beer.
Got the beer, going up along the coast, and there's this little hill that goes up, and the car just went. I lost control of it, you know, because I'd been drinking. Another car came over the hill, and boom, hit broadside.
Vince came up over the hill and hit 2 kids head on, and Razzle died, and Vince walked away unscathed.
And Razzle died in my arms. You know, he was a really good friend of mine, and it was one of the saddest days of my life.
That was a pretty heavy-duty time for Motley.
I think it changed the way people thought of Vince as well. I think, you know, Vince had a hard time going through that.
I feel pretty alienated. I was like, hey, dude, you're on your own.
A lot of people were thinking, oh, nothing's going to happen to Vince. He's going to get off. He has a really good lawyer.
Pay a $2.5 million fine and do 30 days in a local jail, and you're free.
Vince had to sober up fast and clean up his act.
When that accident happened, I don't think it had any real effect on anybody else.
I think everyone was still in La La Land at that point. I don't think it really affected anyone. It certainly didn't slow anyone down.
Coming up, the ultimate chrome polish.
We just had 2 Jaguars lined up, so I just started rolling around on the cars and doing the splits and jumping from one car to the next.
Next on When Metal Ruled the World.
As heavy metal gained popularity in the 1980s, MTV jumped on the bandwagon and made it bigger than ever.
Bands started to record songs that crossed them into the mainstream.
It was the glam thing. It was beautiful vocals on choruses and very poppy and very sing-alongy.
MTV started to play some of the videos, and that was a great feeling because you got some exposure for it.
And you had to have a video. I mean, if you didn't have a video, you weren't on the map.
And this is Warren DeMartini and Stephen Piercy from Rat. You're watching MTV.
The early metal videos, they all had like a certain cheese quality to them. Ooh, look at that girl's hair blowing. Oh, look at that guy with the lightning behind him. Oh my God, it's so heavy.
That was basically the formula for, you know, fake smoke and then photograph it through like a glass mirror so it looks like you're somewhere else.
When you broke on MTV and you became an MTV favorite, you were 24/7. You know, that kind of exposure that MTV gave was tremendous.
The music was fun. The audience could relate to the musicians.
And now you see guys walk around looking all tough with these like big hair and all this makeup.
And the goofy clothes that we were wearing, they were now wearing.
Kids' moms are buying it at Walmart for their kids for Christmas. Here's your Poison record.
Because MTV was on 24 hours a day, you were pretty much guaranteed high rotation.
And then sometimes you'd use certain video chicks.
That video that I did for Whitesnake, we just had 2 Jaguars lined up, so I just started rolling around on the cars and doing the splits and jumping from one car to the next.
Girls come out there, they want to act or they want to model.
I remember Bobby Brown from the Cherry Pie videos. I just remember her putting her finger in her mouth and walking, turning back and looking at the camera. Boy, was she, ooh, she was sexy. I think those videos were popular with the right song and the right girl, and when everything came together, it was just magic.
In the 80s, the big ballad video became huge, and that was started by Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. Once I start singing that song, you get those goosebumps go up, and because everybody knows it. After Home Sweet Home came out, it was de rigueur that every band had a huge ballad.
And you always knew that you would first release your power rock track, and then you were going to follow it with a power ballad. And it's going to be this huge production video, and there's going to be a pretty girl, and there's going to be the sad guy. It was bankable. It was Wall Street power ballads.
That's why the 80s sold millions and millions of metal records.
The one that's most memorable to me is Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Every rose has its thorn. I've never written a ballad that I didn't feel. When I wrote Every Rose, I dated a stripper. I was sure she'd never cheat on me, and she broke my heart, and I wrote a song about it.
I am told Bret Michaels wrote it about a situation where he had a girlfriend, and one of the members in Quiet Riot happened to be boinking her at the time.
I was always pushing for our guys to write a good power ballad. And I go, these power ballads open up the doors to a lot of girls. A lot of girls like to hear power ballads.
Everybody knows more girls were showing up.
Lots of girls would come to the shows, and they're loyal fans.
And that's when you get like 90% women in the audience. And the thing is, like, the guys would go, even if they didn't like your music, they'd go there because the girls were there. And so you'd be sold out every night.
Girls would come to the show. The goal was to get backstage, meet the band.
Hot chicks were very scantily dressed, which is the way we all liked it.
Biggest high of being a groupie is they picked me. They have a whole new town and a whole bunch of girls to choose. They want to walk out with me on their arm, and it was a huge high.
George Lynch is my best. He's the ultimate. I love the man. I really like to jump his bones.
A lot of these girls, it was almost like a badge of honor. If they could say they slept with Nicky, Tommy, Vince, Brett, David Lee Roth, and just go down the list, they're like, yeah.
Well, while we were on stage, a couple of people that worked for us would walk out and look for the best-looking ladies and see if they wanted to come back and have something to drink or whatever. It was all innocent, of course, you know.
Band members would have little cues worked out with the crew as far as signaling who they liked out in the audience. Tugging on my right earlobe, you know, like the brunette in the front.
So we had night vision binoculars.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the chick back. I mean, they'll forget words, stop singing, stop playing. I mean, it's insane.
There's always wild orgies going on the road. Anything you wanted to do was possible at any time, any place, anywhere.
We've had a lot of fun on the bus. Bras from the ceiling, from the bunks.
With Poison, we kept the condom machine on the bus. It was safe sex. We promoted it. We were open about it. And that way you had a lot of fun and you got no diseases.
We actually had a tour bus at one time that was fitted up with video cameras in the back lounge, hidden discreetly behind speaker grills with special lighting so you catch everything on tape. Well, this certain nice young lady and I were in the back lounge, and little did she know that everything we were doing in the back lounge was being viewed on all the television cameras up at the front. And every time I do something a little dramatic, for lack of a better term, there'd be this big, like, rush of applause coming from the front of the bus. And she'd be like, what was that? Well, they're watching a football game, you know?
We were just into the pure freaky sex. That was it.
It was men being as indulgent as they possibly could get away with on every level. All they did was take drugs, get drunk, show themselves off in front of a bunch of adoring fans, and go through chicks like...
Metal ruled from the Strip to the arenas all over the world.
And now America is seeing our LA rock and roll scene, and they're selling millions of records. It was still so hard for us to believe our scene was not our scene anymore. It was the world's.
Metal became so gigantic that MTV was literally forced Saturday night.
I became the host of Headbangers Ball. I'm Ricky Rackman, and it's a special episode of the Headbangers Ball. And that's where we turned America on to all the bands. We are spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of hard rock.
It was really cool because you could stay completely up to minute, and it was very relevant to the 80s hard rock scene at the time.
I thought Headbangers Ball was awesome.
Stephen Piercy, this is Bobby Blotzer. I keep doing that. I don't know why I'm doing that anyway.
It was fun to sit down and just watch 3 hours of metal.
Right now, we're going to be playing a video.
This is Richie Ratchman, thank you. And now we're going to play a video.
This is Slaughter. They've got the #1 Skull Crusher of the week, and this is Fly to the Angels.
The worst thing about MTV's involvement in the whole metal scene was they made it inoffensive.
You completely got overexposed. It just got blown up by the record industry, who was looking for a formula. They had figured out that if you get them a solid power ballad, you've got a home run.
Record labels in the 80s adopted a cookie-cutter approach.
The image became at least as equal, if not more important than the sound. And that happened to a lot of bands.
For the whole genre, it was time to move on because everything had gotten so overindulgent, and we lost sight, I think, of what really rock and roll was all about.
Coming up, the party spins out of control.
I was actually one of the first night. And I'm like, what?
And later, grunge moves in and metal moves out.
I thought, oh, shoot, I gotta go buy a flannel shirt and stop using Aquanet.
Next on When Metal Ruled the World. For more photos and outtakes from When Metal Ruled the World, log on to vh1.com.
In the 80s, with videos and the music, there was a lot of silly stuff, and it was ridiculous. All became about the image and the posing.
Somewhere along the mix, everybody kind of forgot what they were about, and it got worse and cheesier and cheesier. And there was no substance to the music anymore.
When metal started dominating the planet Earth, it became perfect fodder for the Hollywood gristmill, first evidenced by the movie This Is Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap was the perfect parody.
I'm probably one of the few people that actually thought it was funny.
The Stonehenge scene in Spinal Tap was very funny.
Beneath the haunted moon.
Here comes Stonehenge out of the ceiling. Here comes this big, oh my gosh, it's only 2 feet big.
I do not, for one, think that the problem was that the band was down. I think that the problem may have been that there was a Stonehenge monument on the stage that was in danger of being crushed by a dwarf.
Still so hilarious.
No, it's not the 90s.
I mean, every time I get ready for a show, I walk down the hallway.
Go right straight through this door here.
And I go, hello, Cleveland! Hello, Cleveland! You know.
You must have made it a long time.
Where's the stage?
We gotta go another way.
I remember going to see that with Herman Rarebell from Tremor of Scorpions, who took it personally. He was like getting upset about it.
There were some bands that just couldn't handle that. They wanted to be taken more seriously than what they really were.
What happened, I think, was the Spinal Tap let us stop and think and take a look at how really ridiculous the whole situation was. And then I think things started to switch. Gears started to change.
I think that was like the point where people said, enough of this. We need something new.
Then, in 1987, a new band hit the scene.
Out of nowhere comes this little band, Guns N' Roses.
When Guns N' Roses hit the scene, all bets were off.
And Guns N' Roses had this unique image. Axl had his hair straight down, had the bandana going.
Guns N' Roses were a little bit more stripped down.
There's sort of a, I don't give a look going on.
Guns N' Roses, girls either wanted to them or guys wanted to be like them.
Guns N' Roses was all about, I'm going to grab you by the hair, and I'm going to knock your teeth down your throat. There was nothing planned out in Guns N' Roses. It was the purest, most unpredictable thing.
Head banging. MTV smash right here. Guns N' Roses with me right now. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to redecorate this room on your mark.
Guns N' Roses were considered the real deal.
It was just very raw, live, great songwriting, guitar laden, just mayhem.
They had the great frontman, they had the great songs, they had the great musicians.
When Appetite for Destruction came out, it was like a breath of fresh air because it was such a great record.
Appetite for Destruction had so many hits on it, and it was like they were unstoppable.
It was the best thing that happened to rock in California and nationwide and then worldwide from that point on.
Guns N' Roses played the Cat House.
Cat House was our clubhouse, and then Guns N' Roses have been part of the family since day one.
The Cat House was a very reckless place.
It was like the boys' brothel dream come true.
Every excess you could possibly think of was not only available, but encouraged and accepted.
Guns N' Roses was definitely a hard partying band, and anything could happen when you were around them.
Every time you'd see Slash, he had his top hat pulled down and he was walking with a bottle of Jack.
I remember one night I was there with Slash. He had to go to the bathroom. And Slash turns to me and goes, dude, stand here. I gotta take a leak. And he unzipped his pants and he peed in the garbage can. Nobody said, hey, there's Slash's penis. No one said anything.
The metal scene, it had its pattern. These guys worked really hard. They got record deals. They got really famous. They got lots of money. And a lot of them got drug habits. And craziness came, and the excessive living happened.
You feel like rules don't apply to you.
And it got a little out of control.
Bands have always been competitive with each other.
There were rivalries. Some of us got along better than others. There were fights back and forth.
Probably one of the most famous type feuds of rock and roll was my feud with Axl.
It was a feud that had been going on for the longest time.
I was married and my wife, we went to a club and Izzy tried to pick up on her and he was drunk and he kicked her. And she told me what happened. And I said, the next time I see that guy, I'm going to kill him. Well, the next time I saw him was at the MTV Awards.
I was at the MTV Video Awards in 1989. After the show was over, I walked backstage and there was this huge scene going on.
I went up to Izzy, said, next you touch my wife again, I'll kill you. And he's all, you, and I knocked him out.
Axl was not happy with this, so Axl stood up for Izzy. I'm gonna kick your ass, Vince, if I ever see you. And Vince going, you call it anywhere you want it, I'll do it.
I can remember Vince Neil challenging Axl Rose to a fight on TV.
Axl, if you're watching this, I want to challenge you to a fight. I'm gonna give you the time, I'm gonna give you the place, and there's no backing out now, buddy.
Some people lose track of reality.
It's time to put up or shut up. I'm really tired of your mouth. I think a lot of people are.
And the fight never, ever happened, but it was a good feud for many years.
You got to draw the line between real life and the fantasy world. People had to start realizing that they were destructible.
Everybody used to get high together in our circles.
It went from being just a lot of fun and a lot of really fun parties to getting really dark.
There were sporadic ODs here and there. Todd Crew, who was in a band called Jet Boy.
And it was known in the Guns N' Roses circle that Duff and Slash were really close with Todd. And it was known that he was drinking way too much and partying way too much.
Jet Boy had kicked Todd out of the band,
which only accelerated his drinking and his drugs. Him and Slash were in a hotel room. Slash found him OD'd.
And I just remember getting the phone call that Todd had died.
All the guys in Guns N' Roses were really, really upset.
I remember when Guns N' Roses played live and they dedicated Knocking on Heaven's Door to Todd.
This next song is for a friend of ours named Todd. Todd Crew, who recently passed away.
We always thought that we were all superheroes, and the fact is that drugs were stronger than us.
Nicky's always dabbled in heroin. That was his drug of choice.
You know, Nicky left the cat house one night and shot up a bunch of dope, and Nicky OD'd.
I was actually one of the first people that got the phone call. Oh, Nicky's in the hospital and he died. And I'm like, what?
I believe he was clinically dead for 2 minutes, and they had to ram 2 needles of adrenaline into his heart to revive him.
I called the hospital. He said he was out on free admission where they're not responsible.
He hitchhiked home from the hospital and, shot up again.
He went home and did some more drugs.
When you pretty much die, come back to life and do it again, that's the first indication that maybe you have a problem.
We didn't know how bad the drugs were, but they're really bad for you.
And we felt we could do anything, and it was going to last forever.
It showed that we were not indestructible.
Those things really marked in time that things were really changing and bad things do happen.
Next, metal's world comes crashing down.
I think the mistake a lot of the bands made was that they would spend all their money.
Unfortunately, the rug got pulled out from under us, and we pulled it out from under ourselves.
Vince, he would invite cars, write a household check out for $25,000, and he wouldn't have 10 cents in the bank account.
Next on When Metal Ruled the World.
The more famous the bands got, the more excess they had tried.
It was excess all the way around. You did what you wanted to do, and there were no boundaries or no rules.
What had been a lot of fun in the mid-'80s, by the late '80s, wasn't so much fun anymore.
Metal was about having fun, but it started to fall apart.
We had actually gotten way overindulgent, which happened at the end of the '80s, which I think killed the whole scene.
I think the mistake a lot of the bands made was that they would spend all their money.
I know this was the case with my band. We came from nothing, and then we all got big, huge houses. I had a couple Mercedes-Benz.
You go buy a fast car, so I went and bought a Pantera.
And then things started going a little sideways, and maybe the money wasn't coming in as much.
The bands aren't selling records anymore. They're going on the road. They can't pay for the tour bus. They can't pay for hotel rooms.
Vince, he would invite cars, write a household check out for $25,000 for some Pantera or something, and he wouldn't have 10 cents in the bank account.
We got to the point that when things were going really, really bad for the band, I sold my house and started renting.
Started catching up with a lot of people.
The career wasn't panning out the way you would hope and ended up being far shorter. That was part of our downfall.
Unfortunately, the rug got pulled out from under us, and we pulled it out from under ourselves, ironically.
Ooh, let me tell you what I want.
Metal was all about groupies, excess, no political stance whatsoever. Just let's all have a real good time. And then the whole Seattle scene happened.
And we started hearing this drony kind of depressing but very socially relevant kind of music coming out of Seattle. It was a big threat. It was a big threat to the metal kings here.
I think that the turning point from metal ruling the world into grunge ruling the world was the song Smells Like Teen Spirit.
When Nirvana's Nevermind record started to leak out, there was almost this collective shiver going through the metal community. Metal was being blindsided by a shift in culture that was so enormous. I mean, you went from joy and decadence and party and banging your head and powery ballads and girls, girls, girls into this world really sucks.
The next generation was more about, teen angst and, I hate my parents rather than let's go out and have some fun and chicks.
Nothing killed hair metal. It was grunge marketing that affected us. They started to market anger and depression, and that made it big.
I thought, oh, shoot, I got to go buy a flannel shirt and stop using Aquanet.
I didn't like it. I still don't like it. I never understood about singing about how up your life is when everybody knows their lives are up. what we did for a living was to take people away. You get to escape for a few hours at a concert and have fun.
What defines the metal scene in LA so perfectly, and the music that came out of it, it was people escaping.
I think people were living in the moment there. It was a great time. It was an exciting time. And I think a lot of it was tongue-in-cheek. I think they were just having fun doing it.
The whole thing was about forgetting your everyday worries, seeing a show that will mesmerize you. You're just going to go, wow.
It took over every aspect of us. I wouldn't change it for the world.
I don't regret it. I think it was a wonderful time.
Once it gets into your blood, there's no other music like it. You know, we've all heard these songs a million times, and every time we hear them, we still put our fist in the air.
It was the good time era. It was a real time, as Motley Crue coined, of decadence. It was a time of decadence. Decadence ran its course.
Show. It's been a beautiful day with you guys, and we haven't even gotten to Van Halen or AC/DC or Led Zeppelin, much less Guns N' Roses. By the way, tribute. This is a band by T.W. Brown. He's over there signing copies of these. This would be really awesome if you wanted to go over and get Barracuda to sign one. I give one of these out right now. Who wants? Who wants? Who wants? Look at that big hair right there. There you go. All right. Again, thank you to Bud Light, thank you to Whitmer, thank you to iHeartRadio, thank you to Canby Telecom. Hopefully you guys are all posting a bunch of pictures and videos. You're about to get a bunch of really good picture and video opportunities right here. Because it's time, Hairfest 6, it's time, do you hear me? It's time, let's hear it. For Appetite for Deception tribute to Guns N' Roses.